Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today I'm doing something a bit different. You can see I'm on camera. This is not a bit. I want to talk about audio setups and some tips, hopefully, for people that are interested in doing YouTubing or live streaming and things like that. Specifically, just from the audio perspective, because you may not know that, but I did a audio music technology course at college and university, so I have a little bit of knowledge that I want to share with people to maybe help them with their setups. Recently, this has been a big topic between me and some of my friends with various audio issues and different things going on there. And I thought I'd just put some, this video together essentially to just, if there are people out there that want to set up a YouTube channel or set up a Twitch channel, there's a couple things that may help, So let's start things off with probably the most important thing you need for a audio setup, which is a microphone, which we have right here. Now, there are different types of microphones, but there will be two that you come across that people may suggest while doing either podcasting, live streaming, YouTube, whatever it is. And one of those is a dynamic microphone, the other is a condenser microphone. The difference is a dynamic microphone is designed to take a very directional input, as in you have to have the microphone right in front of your face. Here is an example of a dynamic microphone. Oops. This is Shure. They make very, very, very famous microphones for recording instruments and also for vocals. You've probably seen this sort of look on a microphone. This is the cheaper model, the PG57. I bought this a few years ago. There's the most common model is the SM58, I think. Yeah, SM58. Rather than the PG58 or PG57. Anyway, these microphones are very, very robust. They're very, very good for miking up instruments like electric guitar amps and things like that, drums as well. And the 58 has a more rounded face, and it's very much designed to be used in a live environment when singing. So you can have it right up close to your mouth, and the only thing it's really going to pick up is your voice. So dynamic microphones, very, very... the main idea is if you've got the microphone here, if you've got the microphone here, go across, there we go, the sound is coming directly into that bit there. It's not going to pick up sound from... It will pick up sound from these angles, but the idea is that the cardioid pattern, if I can get my hand in line with it, the cardioid pattern which is essentially the front facing of it, is directly in front of this microphone. So you have to have it in front of you like this. If you put the mic off to one side, you're very much not going to hear anything into it. If you put it up, down, it has to be sort of directly in front of that microphone. Now, dynamic microphones can be used for podcasting and things like that, and depending on your setup, you can actually have them sound fairly good. Personally, I prefer not to use them. I don't think they're as good as condensers. They definitely have their pros versus a condenser, but personally I prefer a condenser microphone, which is this thing right here. Now, a condenser microphone is almost the opposite of what you would use a dynamic for. So the idea is this microphone here, this is a Rode NT1A. This is specifically designed for vocals primarily. So if you are in a studio and in a quiet environment, you set the microphone up and essentially get the singer to stand where they want, and then they can just do their take and record their vocals with the music in their head, and it will... Fantastic microphone. I swear by this thing for recording, essentially. But yeah, so a condenser microphone, the way it works is that I don't have to be right here. I can be, but I can also be over here and it'll pick me up, and I can be over here and it'll pick me up. Generally, a condenser is much it's designed to pick up a full range. The biggest downside with a condenser is that, as you can see back there, you can't see, but that window back there is not double glazed. So on some of my recordings, you will hear sirens, car noise, outside noise come by, and this thing will pick it up. Most of the time on my videos, I can usually mask it with other methods, which we'll get onto later. But I swear by these microphones, condensers, because I think they are significantly better. You don't have to have the microphone right in your face the entire time. If I want to slouch back a bit, yeah, it might get quieter, but it will generally pick up my voice fairly well. you know, and I can like move it. This might make a noise, but I can move it away and it will still fairly pick me up, and then you can hear it get louder. And it's just a much more versatile microphone. However, that, you know, it will pick up sound if you're not careful. If you've got loud computers, if you've got background noise, it will likely pick that stuff up as well. Now, obviously, I'm not directly speaking into it. You can see the microphone's off to one side. I'll probably bring it forward a little bit, but I don't like having it directly in front of me. I could, but the biggest difference you guys need to know is that a condenser microphone it will pick up a lot more sound with more clarity and doesn't require you to be stood right in front of it, whereas a dynamic microphone does require that, but it will generally only pick up what's in front of you. The other thing to bear in mind when you have a dynamic mic is that there is something called the proximity effect. So the closer you get to it, the more the lows kind of boom into it. So you could be talking and be fine, and when it gets to about here, it suddenly gets very loud and quite like boomy. You know, so that's the one thing. And I would say as well, you don't have to buy a Rode NT1A, right? I recommend this microphone, but this is about £100, if not a little bit more. There are better models than this, but this is a microphone that I swear by, not only recording vocals, but recording with. I do have two other slightly cheaper. Oh, you can see the microphone back there. Throwing my finger there, back that one. That's also another condenser microphone. That they are cheaper models, but honestly, they'd probably be okay for people starting out. I think they were about £30. I have two of them. They're a bit. The quality is nowhere near as good as this, but to the average listener, they probably wouldn't know that. So. Yeah, so the first thing is obviously finding a microphone that's right for you. Now, you're going to see a lot of people recommend different things. Whether you buy a dynamic microphone or you buy a condenser microphone, one of the most important things, and this will be one of the things that makes your audio significantly better to people that do this, do not buy a USB microphone, ever. If you're going to use a microphone, make sure you're using an XLR cable, which is this thing right here. An XLR cable has a much higher quality of sound than a USB ever will. You know, well, maybe I'll be wrong in years to come. Essentially, you've got one end like that has 3 prongs in it, and then you have the other end where prongs would go into. Always, always, always put your microphone through one of these first, and not directly via USB. Yes, the USB microphones exist. Yes, they're probably better than they've ever been, but if you want the highest quality sound, you need to go through a cable that's designed for it. And so, set up entirely. So whatever your microphone is, you have your microphone, make sure you've got an XLR cable, and that brings you to the next step, which is having some kind of audio interface. Now, an audio interface is essentially a box, usually quite small. It has a line in for your microphone via XLR, sometimes a jack input as well, but also I wouldn't recommend using a microphone that has a jack input. The impedance on it, which is essentially quality, isn't very good. If you can get an XLR cable from your microphone to your audio interface, great, that's the way you want it. And then from that audio interface, you then use your USB out and into your computer. And that is essentially the best way to have a setup. Now, audio interfaces can be various sizes, various makes, various designs, but essentially, as long as it has an XLR input in and a USB out, you should be fine, because essentially what you're doing is having the high quality audio go into the box, and then that's being transferred, rather than the high quality audio from your voice to the microphone going straight into a computer via a cable that is not really designed for audio as well. So now, I personally have you can't see it because it's off screen, I have a Behringer mixing console. So I have, like, because I do music, I need something that's a bit more versatile than just a standard audio interface. But I have that, my microphone goes into that is then USB'd in. I can have multiple microphones, but for now, if you are looking to get some kind of audio interface, then just a small sort of box. I think Behringer, Alesis, they're sort of on the cheaper end. Would recommend looking at reviews and things first, but that's the kind of thing you're going to be looking for. One thing I did forget to mention with these bad boys, condenser mics have something called phantom power, which genuinely speaking will be on most audio interfaces if they, well, should be. My mixing desk has 2 power switches, one to turn it on, one to turn on the phantom power. The reason why is a dynamic mic doesn't require that at all. These do. They require like a 48 volt charge to really work. So that's something that is worth bearing in mind. If you don't have something with phantom power on, this isn't going to work. I mean, it will work, but it'll be super quiet, so don't do that. But yeah, so now you've got your microphone, you've got your XLR cable into your audio interface into your computer. Now, that is probably the best setup you can have in terms of just, I need a microphone and I just want it to make sound. And so I'm using XSplit, but you can use OBS and stuff, and as long as they can pick up your USB device, your USB audio interface, mixing console, whatever it is, you should be golden from then, right? You'll have a basic setup that should sound okay. It's what you do then that kind of really matters. Now you can see I've got this thing in front of this condenser mic. This is a pop shield. You don't necessarily need them for dynamic mics, but honestly, I would just get a pop shield anyway because it stops the plosives, the p and the b sounds. This one's not very good, if I'm honest. I actually have a proper pop shield that came with this microphone, which is a big like metal one. It just doesn't fit as well on this arm. But you should absolutely get one of these. These will help just reduce those sounds coming through significantly. So yeah, on the physical side of it, have your mic, have whatever stand it's on, have a pop shield cable into your audio interface. Cool. And that brings us to the sort of digital side of it, I guess. So when you have your setup, whether that be in XSplit or OBS or whatever program you're using, one thing that I would recommend, that if you are going to let's say you're doing YouTube videos, you absolutely want to go into the options in both those programs and have multi-track audio selected. And what that allows you to do, like if you're someone like me who records, let's say I'm playing a game, and you've got me talking, you've got the video game's music and sound effects also. If I'm making a video on that, I can then take the multi-track audio, stick it into something like Premiere, and it splits my audio tracks up, which means I can then individually turn up my voice, turn down my voice, and the game. And for video, that's huge. So let's talk about like YouTube videos to start with, and then I'll talk a little bit of live streaming because I got more experience with the YouTube side of it. So you will be able to, I have less experience with OBS, but in XSplit there are audio options that can help improve your audio essentially and help improve how you sound. The four things that may come up that are worth learning about are compressors, equalizers, limiters, and gates. Now all of these sound like big fancy words, and they all have their uses, and you may not need all of them. It really depends on you. The main one I would say is a compressor. Essentially, compressors are quite complicated in how they work, but essentially what it does is if you've got an audio wave of you talking and you're a bit quiet at some points and a bit loud at other points, a compressor essentially tries to even that out so you are the same volume the entire time. I think I have the one on XSplit set up, so I think I'm essentially the same volume the entire time, or meant to be, as best as it can. So it tries to just be like, right, this is your volume, this is what you've got it set at, this is the line, just a line across, rather than doing like this, or like up a load and then down a load. It just tries to keep it a nice level. And that's one of the first things that can really help somebody who's got a setup and stuff to just sound just a nice, consistent quality of audio. So you may not want to fiddle too much with the compressor settings. They are one of those things you kind of have to learn about. But as soon as you attach a compressor to your signal and you just kind of turn it on and you get like a simple setup, you should notice a difference of just being like, oh, I kind of sound the same level throughout the entire time. You then have limiters and gates. A limiter, the idea between a limiter is that it will not, you set the limiter and be like, I never want my audio to go above this point. So what that means is that whenever you get too loud, it will go like, nope, this is your cutoff point, you can't get louder than this. This is something you may not need so much when you've got a compressor, because a compressor can kind of do this as well, and some have it built in. But so it's something to bear in mind. Again, always with these things, you can always go and there's tons of information out there on how these things work. I'm just giving you a quick overview of like what is designed for. You also have something called noise gates, and noise gates they're kind of the opposite. So when your volume hits below a certain level, your microphone essentially shuts the gate, so it stops any audio coming in. So when you have a noise gate attached, the idea is that this microphone will only pick up sound when I speak, or when audio in the room hits a certain amount of decibels or volume. So let's say I put on a mid-range noise gate. What I'm doing there is saying, okay, I want it from the volume level has to be this many decibels loud for this to open. And most of the time you can set a fairly decent gate that's not extreme, and it will just shut the microphone off until you start talking, because again, you're going to be fairly close, whether I'm sat back here or over here, that should be picked up. You can have a much more extreme gate where I really do just have to be here and nowhere else, and that essentially means anything below a certain level, gone. Obviously, you can't necessarily completely get rid of the background noise, because obviously if I'm talking and the gate's open, it's going to let all the volume in, essentially. So that's how that works. And obviously the last thing is an equalizer or an EQ. And now these are very specific in the sense that they give you frequency bands. Now each person's spoken word, every sound is set at a different frequency, and essentially the idea is that you can tweak those frequencies, saying I want less of the lower frequencies, I don't want the boominess of my voice, and you can kind of adjust those down. Or you're like, oh, I don't want the high pitches, I want more of the mids, and you can do some fun things with equalizers. All four of these things combined, you can get some really good sounding volume from talking, and have a very consistent sound. Most average people, like, you can have hardware versions of all of these, and you can have software versions. There is some stuff built into XSplit that you can use that will help improve your sound, but you probably have to look for like virtual versions of these, and they can be quite pricey. I only use what XSplit currently has, which I think is a compressor, and there might be a noise gate or a limiter in there. There's a couple of things that are quite basic, but I have found that have improved my audio. So, just to recap a few things. So we've got the setup. We've got the option to use virtual or hardware compressors and EQs and things. And these are just some of the ways to massively improve someone's sound. Microphone technique, again, with a condenser, less of an issue. Don't need to worry about it so much. On your hardware, again, I should probably mention this earlier, on your audio interface, you may have an input level as well. One thing you will have to do is practice some videos. Just speak into the microphone, get comfortable speaking to the microphone. If you're not happy with the audio, turn it up a little bit. Never have the audio levels all the way up. That's a terrible idea. You will just clip, you distort, it will sound horrible. 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. So if you've got a dial, you see the little knobs, they usually start at 7 o'clock and they go all the way around to 5 o'clock. Ideally, you want it at about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock position. I wouldn't, you may not ever need that, but that is where I would start, like 12, 1, 2 on one of those dials, and go from there. Don't ever really have it up to 5 o'clock on those, because again, it will just sound terrible. You can have input gain and you can have volume. And now you want to be very careful when using those, because input gain, if you have that really loud and you have volume, you again will distort. Input, you can generally have, again, you have to practice with it to find what works for you, but have the volume set at 1 and then just adjust the input gain to a degree, and you should be alright. Things like XSplit, I think OBS does it as well. They will have a visual indicator of how loud you are. It's usually a little bar. On XSplit, it essentially has it underneath the microphone thing. Like, mine goes up and down as I'm talking. If it's all the way to the right, then you're probably too loud. You want it to kind of move back and forth a little bit. Mine sort of goes about 60 to 75% along. So it's not overly loud, so it should be alright. So yeah, I think, apart from, the other thing I should go over is live stream settings, and this is it kind of brings in the video game audio settings as well. Something you will probably do once is you'll think you've turned the audio in a video game down quite enough, but actually you haven't. When you live stream, your microphone, or as far as I found, my microphone, even though the settings have not changed on all this, because I'm live streaming and going through YouTube, it gets kind of squished a little bit and it sounds a bit quieter than it actually is. So, if you're playing a video game and you think the audio is quiet enough, Again, maybe test record it, but bear in mind with live stream, you usually need it a bit lower than that. If I'm playing something like Civilization, I know I need the music to be about 30% or less. In fact, most games, when it comes to the music volume, 30 or less. Never have it anything higher than that. It'll just be too loud. Sound effects is completely optional, but just bear in mind when you are live streaming, I've watched it and seen it done many times where people haven't quite got the audio balance right. I would rather be able to hear the person talking much louder than if it was the other way around. I don't want to hear the game sounds and then have whatever they're saying buried, because when you're live streaming, you're there to see what the person's doing, the personality. You want to be able to hear them, and if you can't hear them, it's kind of a turn off. So really be aware of that. And obviously, if you are live streaming, ask people in the chat. If people are watching, just say, hey, how's my audio quality sound? Is the game too loud? Is it too quiet? You know, and be aware that you always kind of want to be louder than the game. You never really want it the other way around. So yeah, that's a big thing. I've struggled with that myself. I still haven't quite got it right, but I am aware of it. Yeah, I think that was kind of mainly all my points today. I just wanted to go over this because I think sometimes audio stuff can be a bit, for some people, just a bit like, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? You know, I need a microphone, and I need an audio interface, and I need cables and all this other stuff. But none of this has to be super expensive, right? You can probably get an like most microphones now will come with like maybe a stand and an XLR cable. We'll get there in the end. The audio interface might be like, so at max you might be able to get away with spending about 70 quid. You know, get yourself a 30 quid microphone, get yourself maybe a 30 to 40 quid audio interface, and then OBS is free. XSplit does cost. I think there might be a free license for it as well, but those programs are fairly easy to get up. And once you've got an audio interface, you've got your microphone, your XLR into your audio interface plugged in, you're pretty much ready to go. You don't need the compressors and limiters and stuff. That can come later. The first thing you want to do is make sure that what you're saying is coming through clearly into your computer and into your recordings. And as you've kind of got a gist for it, and you've got your settings set up, and you make sure it's all working, then you can look at adding the compressor, the gates, EQs, all that kind of stuff. Again, do some significant research on these things so you actually understand how they work, but they will make a difference. And practice record. Practice until you are happy with how you sound. You'll know if it's distorted, you'll know if it's clipping, because you'll be able to hear it. But get a setup that works for you. You might find that a dynamic microphone is better for you. You might find that actually it's not, you know, condenser's the way forward. I swear by these. I just significantly think these are better, just because they're more versatile. But if you are in a more noisy environment, then maybe a dynamic is better for you. So hopefully this is a useful video to somebody. You know, I had to learn my way around, and I finally got there, and you know, seeing my friends deal with audio stuff as well, it's just one of those things. Like, I can watch a video in 720p or 1080 fine. I don't care about visual quality as much, but if the audio is rubbish, I'm not watching it. But yeah, hopefully this video has been useful to somebody. If you have any questions about things, feel free to chuck them in the comments below, because I will try and answer them as best as I can. I also expect that there will be people out there that will probably disagree with what I'm saying, but so be it. This is just my opinions on it. But thank you very much for watching as always. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit subscribe. And links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always. Until next video, I will see you then.